You have been paying into Social Security since the very first paycheck you ever earned. 6.2% of every dollar you made taken out before you ever touched it, matched by another 6.2% from your employer, sent into a system built on a specific promise. That promise was not complicated. You contribute throughout your working life, and when the time comes, the system delivers. When you reach retirement age, someone is there to help you file correctly and collect every dollar you are owed. If disability strikes before retirement, someone is there to process your claim and make sure your family does not fall through the cracks. If you pass away, someone is there to make sure your spouse and children receive the survivor benefits they are entitled to. That was the deal. You held up your end of it for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. The system has not held up its end. And right now, today, the gap between what was promised and what is actually being delivered is costing ordinary Americans real money in the form of missed benefits, incorrect calculations, unanswered phones, and benefit types that millions of people never even knew existed. This conversation is about exactly what is going wrong, why it is happening, and what you need to know to protect yourself, because the information that should be coming from the Social Security Administration is not coming from them. So we are going to cover it here. We are going to talk about the staffing crisis that is gutting the agency's ability to serve people. We are going to explain how the trust fund actually works and what the real timeline looks like. We are going to walk through divorced spouse benefits, grandparent benefits, disability closed periods, retirement payment scheduling, and the overpayment problem that blindsides thousands of Americans every single year. Every one of these topics represents money that belongs to people who paid into this system and either never received it or lost it through confusion that should never have existed in the first place. The starting point for understanding everything that is currently broken about Social Security's customer service operation is understanding what that operation was supposed to be funded by. When the FICA tax structure was designed, a portion of the money collected, less than 1% of contributions, was designated specifically to fund the administrative infrastructure needed to deliver benefits effectively. That meant staffed phone lines, local offices with knowledgeable employees, people who could sit across from a retiring school teacher or a recently widowed spouse and explain in plain language what benefits were available, how to apply for them, and what to watch out for. That administrative commitment was embedded in the original design of the program because the people who created Social Security understood something important. A benefit that people do not know about or cannot access is not actually a benefit. It is just money that disappears into a bureaucratic void while the people who need it go without. That understanding guided the program for decades. And then, over a period of years that stretches back well before any recent political development, Congress began systematically underfunding the administrative operations of Social Security while simultaneously refusing to address the structural issues that affect the program's long-term finances. The result is a Social Security Administration that is currently operating with staffing levels at a 50-year low. That number deserves to be held up against the reality of what is happening demographically at the same moment. Roughly 12,000 Americans are turning 65 every single day. The baby boom generation, people born between 1946 and 1964, represents the largest and most sustained wave of retirees in American history. More people are filing for retirement benefits, disability benefits, survivor benefits, and spousal benefits right now than at virtually any point in the program's 90-year history. The demand on the Social Security Administration has never been higher, and the workforce available to meet that demand has never been smaller relative to need in 50 years. The practical consequence of that collision between rising demand and collapsing capacity is what millions of Americans experience every time they try to interact with the agency. Hold times measured in hours, local office appointments scheduled weeks out, phone calls that end without a resolution, questions answered incorrectly by overwhelmed staff who do not have the time or the training to provide the detailed, case-specific guidance that complex benefit situations require. People miss filing deadlines they did not know existed. People accept benefit amounts they were told are correct without realizing the calculation was wrong. People never learn about entire categories of benefits they were eligible for because no one at the agency took the time to explain them. This is not an abstract policy failure. It is a daily financial reality for tens of millions of Americans, and it has been building for decades. Now let us address how Social Security's money actually works, because there is more misinformation circulating about this topic than almost any other aspect of the program, and that misinformation tends to obscure the real and genuinely serious issue that deserves attention. Social Security has operated on a pay-as-you-go basis since its inception in 1935. The payroll taxes collected from people who are currently working are used to fund the benefits being paid to people who are currently retired or receiving disability or survivor payments. Approximately 91% of every Social Security benefit check is funded by the payroll tax contributions of today's workforce. The remaining 9% comes from the Social Security Trust Fund, and that percentage is rising each year as the ratio of active workers to beneficiaries continues to shift in the direction of more beneficiaries and proportionally fewer workers. The trust fund is real. It was not raided, and the money was not diverted. It represents the accumulated surplus from years when payroll tax collections exceeded the amount needed to pay current benefits, invested in United States Treasury securities. The trust fund currently holds over $2 trillion. But here is the reality that matters for every person currently receiving or approaching Social Security benefits. The trust fund is being drawn down at a rate of approximately $100 billion per year, and that rate is increasing as more baby boomers enter retirement. At the current trajectory, the trust fund has approximately 81 annual draws remaining before it reaches zero. When that happens, if Congress has not acted to address the shortfall, benefits will need to be reduced by approximately 23% to align with available payroll tax revenue. That is the actual problem. A demographic shift that was visible and predictable for decades, combined with 40 years of congressional inaction on the legislative changes that would have addressed it. The solutions have been proposed and debated throughout that entire period. They simply have not been enacted, and every year that passes without action makes the eventual adjustment more painful. With that context established, let us turn to the specific benefit situations that generate the most confusion and the most preventable financial loss for real families. These are not obscure edge cases. They are categories of benefits that apply to millions of Americans, that the Social Security Administration is legally obligated to pay, and that go unclaimed every year simply because the agency is not doing the work of explaining them to the people who qualify. Divorced spouse benefits are among the most underutilized provisions in the entire Social Security program. The misunderstanding almost always runs in the same direction. People who went through a divorce assume their Social Security situation is based entirely on their own earnings record. If that record is thin or non-existent because they spent years out of the workforce during the marriage, they assume they are simply not entitled to much. That assumption is wrong for a very large number of divorced Americans, and it costs them money they have a legal right to receive. If you were married to someone for at least 10 consecutive years and you are currently unmarried, you may be entitled to receive a benefit based on your former spouse's Social Security earnings record. The trigger condition is that your own full retirement benefit must be less than 50% of your ex-spouse's full retirement benefit. When that condition is met, Social Security will pay you up to that 50% level. Your former spouse's benefit is not reduced in any way by your claim. They receive exactly what they would have received regardless of whether you file. You do not need their cooperation, their knowledge, or their permission. Your ex-spouse does not even need to currently be receiving their own Social Security benefits, though they do need to be at least 62 years old and eligible. To initiate the process, you need to be at least 62 yourself and currently receiving Social Security retirement benefits. If your own earnings history is insufficient to qualify you for retirement benefits independently, divorced spouse benefits can still be available to you as a standalone entitlement. Not having paid significantly into Social Security yourself does not disqualify you from receiving benefits if you were part of a long marriage to someone who did. Survivor benefits for divorced spouses carry a different set of requirements. If your former spouse has passed away, the minimum marriage duration drops from 10 years to 9 months. A widow or widower who was divorced from the deceased, provided the marriage lasted at least 9 months, may be entitled to survivor benefits. This goes unclaimed with startling frequency because people simply assume a divorce eliminates any financial connection to a former spouse's Social Security record. It does not. If you were married for at least 9 months and your former spouse has died, the question of survivor benefit eligibility deserves a direct answer from the Social Security Administration. Benefits for grandchildren being raised by grandparents represent another area of substantial unclaimed money. Social Security does provide for grandchildren in specific circumstances, but all eligibility conditions must be met simultaneously. The grandparent must be currently receiving Social Security retirement or disability benefits. Both of the child's biological parents must be either deceased or disabled. One parent being absent or deceased is not sufficient. Both must meet the deceased or disabled standard. The grandparent must be providing at least half of the child's total financial support, and either a formal legal adoption must have occurred or the parental death and disability must be fully documented. When all conditions are present, the grandchild is eligible for a monthly benefit from the grandparent's earnings record. For grandparents serving as representative payees, the Social Security Administration offers an advanced designation process to name a successor. If no advanced designation exists and the representative payee becomes unable to continue, a family member or trusted person can go to any local Social Security office and apply to take over. The process is designed to ensure continuity of benefits without interruption. The concept of a closed period of disability is one of the most frequently misunderstood provisions in Social Security. This situation arises most often at the administrative law judge stage, the third level of the disability appeals process. Because the appeals process is lengthy, it is not uncommon for years to pass between an initial filing and a hearing before a judge. By the time that hearing occurs, some applicants have partially recovered and returned to work. The judge, reviewing the full medical record, may determine that while the applicant does not currently qualify for ongoing disability benefits, there was a clearly defined period in the past when they genuinely could not work. In that circumstance, the judge can approve a closed period of disability, authorizing retroactive benefit payments for that specific window of time. For this to apply, the disability must have lasted at least 12 consecutive months, which is Social Security's threshold for a qualifying long-term disability. The resulting retroactive payment covers the period of genuine disability, even though ongoing benefits are not continuing. For people still in the early stages of a claim who have already returned to work, a closed period outcome at the initial level is considerably harder to achieve, and many such claims result in denial. For people transitioning into retirement, understanding how Social Security schedules payments prevents a surprise that catches many new beneficiaries off guard. Social Security pays all benefits 1 month in arrears. The payment that arrives in any given month represents the benefit for the prior month. If your first month of entitlement is June, your first payment will not arrive until July. This is not a delay or an error. It is how the system works for everyone. The specific day within the month when your payment arrives is determined by your birth date. If you were born on the 1st through the 10th, your payment arrives on the second Wednesday of each month. If born on the 11th through the 20th, the third Wednesday. If born on the 21st through the end of the month, the fourth Wednesday. Knowing this before you file allows you to plan your cash flow accurately during the retirement transition. Overpayment notices are among the most stressful correspondence a Social Security recipient can receive. The most common source involves the annual earnings limit for people collecting retirement benefits before reaching full retirement age. In 2025, that limit is $24,480. For every $2 earned above that threshold, Social Security withholds $1 of benefits. Because Social Security learns about earnings through the following year's tax return rather than in real time, overpayments are often discovered 12 months after they occurred. Receiving a demand to repay $5,000 on a fixed income is genuinely destabilizing. If you receive an overpayment notice, you have the legal right to appeal the determination, request a waiver based on financial hardship, or arrange an interest-free repayment plan. An overpayment notice is not a final judgment. It is the beginning of a process with multiple available responses. The thread connecting every issue covered here is the same. The benefits are real, they are funded, and they exist in law. What is failing is the delivery system. Knowing these rules in advance, before you need them, is the most financially protective step any Social Security participant can take. This is Retirement Wealth Watch.